Hey there, and welcome to Destination I Do's podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Stein. And if you're one of those people who's struggling with what to say, if you've been tapped to do a speech at a wedding, or perhaps you're even struggling to write your vows, we have a great episode for you. So today we are joined by the wonderful guest, Brian Franklin. He's the co-owner and co-founder of Vows and Speeches, and he oversees all interviews and script writing at his company. He basically has a background as a consultant for over 25 years in communications and marketing. As I understand it, you're even like a communication strategist and political consultant who has actually done speech writing for different
Yeah.
federal and state campaigns. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a recovered political consultant.
Oh,
Yeah, but that was where, background in advertising and running communications for campaigns, and part of that involved speech writing and media prep and debate prep and that sort of thing. So skills that translated well when we switched over into the wedding industry.
that's awesome. Well, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us, because I feel like there's a lot of couples who, maybe some people are really great. Some people are wordsmiths, and this is not something that they struggle with, but there's a lot of people that do. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about vows and speeches and just learn about how you can help these couples for the vow writing portion of it, but then also for speeches, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure around giving the perfect speech. And I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of viral videos of like the drunken groomsman who is like bumbling his way and talking about strip clubs, and everyone's like, cringing. So I'm assuming the idea behind this is to help those exact people.
It is, although I think what we're finding is there are a lot of people that consider themselves good writers, but they are not comfortable writing about love. Like it's something, or the pressure of doing it justice freezes them up at some level or some capacity. So you can even be a great writer and struggle to find the right words in this scenario. So we do have some people that just need a little assistance pushing it over the top, and where we serve almost as editors rather than writers. But yeah, you mentioned the speeches, and I mean that it was the initial idea for this came out of being at too many weddings and seeing so many boring speeches, or ones that where something was said that was either inappropriate or embarrassing, and then the more that you talk to planners and just to couples in general, you find that this happens all the time. It's a danger to the wedding, and sometimes it's a critical danger to the wedding, in the sense that you can, if you have one person that goes 20 minutes long, let's say the food doesn't come out on time and now it's cold,
Mhm.
or it cuts out time at the end of the wedding to do certain things, where you run into your dance time, for example, or your vendors, if you're booking a place for 4 hours, and then you're done and the vendors have to leave. And so making sure that things run on time, that they're done in a way that is impactful, and that you're doing no damage to the wedding, that's the primary concern. But I think what we really want is for these moments to be special. No part of this should be boring. People are spending all types of money on wedding, and whether you have a big budget wedding or a more modest budget, it's still a meaningful budget to you. And to have those portions of the event fall flat, it would be a shame. So that's what we're trying to solve.
So who would you say is like your perfect client? Who's the person that this vow and or speech writing is ideal for? Is it anybody, or is it someone that, just really struggles, or
I think it's anybody that doesn't feel that they really have it, that if you're even slightly doubting your ability to do this, or you've run out of time and you're just too busy to really sit down and think about it, um, then we can help you. And so it takes a lot of the anxiety out of it too. If you're someone that gets anxious about public speaking, or you just really want to do a good job, it just helps to have somebody that's working with you, that's a professional, that's a sounding board, and can help you put your thoughts together. And so I think it's everybody except the ones that are completely comfortable doing this and know exactly what to do.
Yeah. So, okay, weddings are a matter of the heart, right?
Mhm.
So, and people want to have, I mean, I'm assuming if they've hired vows and speeches and you to create something really meaningful for them, there, that's a lot of trust, right? So, and it's extremely personal. So how do you kind of get to the heart of what someone should or shouldn't say to create either their speech or their vow? Like, do you handle speeches and vows similarly, or are they completely two different things?
Well, let me address the personalization aspect first. I think people there's a initial misconception that oh, you're writing my vows for me. That's that's it's impersonal.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's taking something out of it.
Right.
And that's not what we're doing. What we do is a very exhaustive, usually, and it's an hour-long interview with the couple or whoever's hired us to, and we ask them all types of questions. We ask them follow-up questions. We get into the real details of why they love each other and what and how their relationship is unique to them, and the little things that make that fun. And when you get all of that information, it's an hour-long interview. The vows are usually 1 to 2 minutes, so you're taking the best stories and the best phrases and the best things that the sentiments that they've conveyed, and it's still very, very much them. No speeches are alike. There might be a similar structure to them, but the overall sentiment is specific to their story. And uh, I think in these cases they're always surprised at how it doesn't feel like someone else wrote it for them, and because it feels like their words. And I record them. I hear their own wording, and it makes it much easier for me, and they tend to not have a whole lot of changes because it's their words. So that works out. But as far as speeches go, speeches are longer. They're usually 3 to 4 minutes instead of 1 to 2. um it, it's coming from a different perspective. There are, if you're doing a maid of honor speech, for example, or a father of the bride speech, you're coming from different angles. So typically with a parental speech, you might you might tell a little bit more about their childhood and some of the things that they appreciated about them as being their children. And then and then you segue into of course the fiance, or now in this case the spouse, right? So and talk about the role that they have had in getting to know them, and what they've seen in the relationship. So I think it's just coming from a different angle. With vows, I think there's a lot more pressure
Mm.
because you're up there, and it's such a meaningful key moment. And I think the expectations for speeches are a little bit lower. you know
Definitely. And I think too, people at that point, they've had probably some libations, they're a
yeah,
little looser, like
right.
the massive, pressure of the ceremony is over. And so the speeches usually, I find at all the weddings I've attended through the years, they're much more like a good speech. I
Mhm.
feel like a good speech is always a little bit of laughter, a little like choked up tears, just
Yeah,
a little, like not like hysterically bawling or anything, but like just kind of like, like a sentimental comment, or if let me just tell you, if the father of the bride gets choked up, I'm done for. I'm literally
yeah.
done for. I
Oh, I
am
love it.
pile of tears and
You
like,
want people crying. You just don't want you want the big fear for a lot of people when they're giving these speeches, what is that they're going to cry so much they can't read it,
yes,
right? And
yes,
that's where practice comes in. The repetition of reading this over and over and over again out loud. You get your mouth around it, you get some muscle memory, and the potency of the words, as sentimental as they are, goes down just enough to where you're still going to get choked up perhaps, but you're not going to fall apart. And so it dials down the temperature just enough for you
yeah.
to get going. But the other problem with speeches is that people think that it is their opportunity to do stand-up comedy,
Oh, I
and
know. And you're like,
as
look,
if they are
I'm an
professionals.
amateur comic, they
Right.
sit
Yeah.
down.
And as if comics don't spend eons honing their craft and the timing of their jokes. And there are some people that are, of course, naturally funny and have naturally good timing and know how to do it,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't. And so having a speech written so that it hits some funny parts, but it also drops down a little bit, and having some dynamics is really the key there. It can't all be jokes, and it can't be completely overwrought with sentimentality, because then it just it becomes monotone in its theme. So
But
you
like,
want it to have a bit of an arc, almost like I liken it to concert set lists. If you ever, whether you like heavy metal or anybody else, but they're going to have the fast songs, and then they're going to have some slow songs, and they're going to mix them up in a way to where they're bringing you on a journey toward the ends of it. And that's how I kind of look at the when I'm doing a speech. I want to make sure that I'm not going too far in any one direction for too long.
now, do you ever get like a groomsman or a bridesmaid where the joke that, like, as you're putting the speech together, you're cringing, like, we can't include this because grandma's
Absolutely.
gonna literally fall off her chair and have a heart attack? Or like, and how do you handle that? Because what if the bridesmaid's like, well, I'm including it, I don't care, and like they don't have the capacity to read the room? Like, what do you do in
I
situations
I
like
look. I
that?
mean, I can only give them the best guidance that I can give them. This is on them, and it's even in my agreements. Like, we're not. This is your deal, right? We can help you and give you advice, but this is your deal. And yes, I've had a couple instances where someone wanted to say something particularly inappropriate or embarrassing, and almost every time was able to walk them back away from it. I did have one client who wanted to spend a bit of time talking about his sex life with his now wife, and I was able to convince him not to do that. He really wanted to talk about how much he loved her butt, and and so we made a couple of like little jokes, but we didn't go the full way that he wanted to go. So it was enough to where I was like, okay, I guess we could do this, but
Yeah.
it wasn't so bad that I thought the room would cringe. But that's my job too, is to, especially coming out of politics. I
Oh
I
yeah.
do have a sense of what a crowd will tolerate, and I think and so we're maybe a little bit more careful than we need to be, but it's better to err on the side of
Oh,
caution here.
completely. Because I've
So
been in the room when there's a joke made and
yeah.
it's like radio silence,
Oh, it's
like
yeah.
the crickets, and it's like, oh God, that bombed. And it bombed to the point where it's hard to like get back to and cheers to the couple. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah, it takes the
everybody in
whole
there is
wind
like
out of the room.
talking about it later on. They're like, can you believe that Brian said, not you, Brian, but like
Yeah.
the Brian with the Y,
Yeah.
like said whatever. And there's just, I can't even count how many times the speeches have gone sideways. And part of it is because of the content, but part of it too is because someone just either threw it together at the last minute and they're like, I don't know what to do. So they procrastinate to the point where it's like the day before or the day of, and then they're scrambling to put something together. So they haven't practiced it. And there's not a lot of intentionality behind it. They figure, oh, I'll just do it the day of, I'll just shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that is where like the issues really start. So the fact that you are hired ahead of time, which how far ahead of time is the best like time frame? Let's say the wedding.
Well, yeah, I I look at it from two directions. There is the idea that you should probably start thinking about this right from the beginning of your planning, because first of all, you want to have as much time as possible to make edits, sit with it, look at it again. We will make more edits, we can play with it, and you'll have all the time in the world to practice it and get it down, right?
Yeah.
um I think there's a minimum window to do it right, in the sense that if you're doing it anytime inside 2 weeks, you're probably not going to have enough time to make edits and practice the
Mhm.
way that you would if you had 3 weeks. And so I think anything more than 2 weeks is enough to get it done right. The more time you have to get it done, the better. But also you have to think about the budgetary piece of it. You don't want this to be a last minute surprise expense. You want to maybe look at this from the beginning and go, okay, well, maybe I'll have I'll take a little bit outside of flower. We don't charge a whole lot. It's like, speeches are 500, vows are 600 for both, and 400 for one, and our ceremonies are 950. But maybe you take a little bit out of flowers, or maybe you took, or some other piece that you were thinking that's optional, just to make sure that your father-in-law, who would be prone to having 12 bourbons and going off the rails, has a little bit of guidance, right? Or your best man, if you know that person is prone to some inappropriate comments, then maybe this is something where let's just head them off at the pass. And I can't guarantee that they will follow the script, but in most cases, when you've worked with a professional, when you've practiced it with us, because all of our packages include a practice session, so they read it to us, we go through some notes, read it again, and perhaps we make some edits to make certain things easier to say. But when they've gone through this process, they're probably going to stay on script for them, at least for the most part. They're not going to go wild and crazy. But some people's humor, they could have a great sense of humor that works really well in a living room, or really well in a bar. But the etiquette of a wedding, and the idea that this is supposed to be a special moment, a gift to the couple. If you're doing your speech, it's a gift to the couple. And so what you want to do is make sure it stays a gift. Not, it's not about your ability to get everybody rolling. You want them to be happy, right? And that's the goal.
Well, and you do make a really good point about the fact that like some people can be great in a living room and, or a bar, but at a wedding, it really is a special moment for a couple. And, I think with destination weddings, sometimes the groups are smaller.
Mhm.
And sometimes, even with that, if anything, like the speech is in some ways even more important because it's such an intimate group. And so there's sometimes even more vulnerability there.
Mhm.
It's like, because it's such a small, space, perhaps it's like, everyone's just kind of like right up in each other's faces. But with like a really large wedding, you just have way more eyeballs. Sometimes, there's videos being taken, and,
Yeah.
the stakes are high, and you do have a mixed group of people. You have different generations that think different things are funny. I'm often like, my son is, he's 12 years old, and the stuff that he thinks is funny, I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
get it at all. Like, I do not understand what
Yeah.
they find funny about certain things. And that's generational. It's also maturity level, but so you're absolutely right about.
But also with destination weddings, you have, people have gone to great expense, to get to the place that they want to get to. Perhaps it's an all-inclusive, and they've been drinking all day, but so there are a lot of danger points here. But if you've gone to all the effort to put this beautiful destination wedding together, then having these moments shine, and having them something that, you've hired a videographer, you want to give them good material to edit, and
Mm.
have the thing that you wanted at the end of it. So but whether it's a small group, I don't think there's a big difference between small groups and large groups, except for the terror that some people feel when they get up there with a microphone, right?
Yeah. True.
And it's a little easier to get in front of 25 of your favorite, friends and family, versus 150 people, half of which you don't know. And so but those moments are important. And with the ceremony and the vows themselves, this is an opportunity to get people leaning into the rest of the event. So if
Mhm.
you're telling, if you have a ceremony officiant who either runs out of time, isn't prepared, or they just decide they're going to go online and grab a generic script or whatever, um, if they do that, it kind of defeats the purpose of having a person who knows you doing the ceremony. You want the personalization, and you want to let people in the audience know how this happened, and tell the story of the relationship, and all of the things that make you what you are. And if you do that the right way, people lean in. They're not just waiting for cocktail hour, hearing the same thing they've always heard before. You want them leaning into the event, and it changes the whole tempo of the rest of the night.
So as far as like mistakes that you see, like avoidable mistakes, like as far as speech writing, like take you out of the equation,
Mhm.
you're a
Sure.
professional, what are like the number one mistakes you see happen, besides like the person who's trying to have like a stand-up comic hour, like
Sure.
what are some things that are like, oh no, please?
The number one thing is it goes too long.
Okay.
So people don't, you'll tell them, hey, you should do 3 to 4 minutes or whatever, 5 minutes max. 5 minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
And it's a long time to carry a crowd. And there's a reason, by the way, there's a reason why most hit songs are, 3 minutes or so, right? And not 5 minutes. But I think they don't know what 5 minutes looks or 4 minutes looks like on a page. They 4 minutes on a page is probably close to uh, a page maybe in 12-point font, right? And depending on how much you break up the lines on the page, but maybe it's a page and a half. Uh, people come in and they come in with like 5 pages of material, and so
Yeah.
they wind up going 10, 15, 20 minutes, and now everybody's just out of their mind. The other mistake you see a lot is people try and wing it. They just get up there with bullet points, and when you do that and you don't really know what you're saying, now you're thinking while you're speaking, and the pace and the tempo of that is not very conversational,
Mhm.
because they go and oh yeah, and then they, so winging it, going too long, I think, and also not practicing, because you really do want to have it. You don't need to memorize it. And in fact, we advise against doing that, because the same thing, you start thinking about it while you're doing it. And saying it at home in your room is very different than saying it in front of 150 people. But I think you do want to get to a point where it sounds conversational, to where it sounds natural, where you're not having that reading voice, uh, and you can concentrate enough on the dynamics where you raise your voice when you're saying something really fun and you're getting really excited about it, and then maybe you drop it a little bit when you're saying something more sentimental and sweet, and that's so a little bit of acting comes into play, but especially if you don't like one of the couple, but but uh but and that's the other thing, I think, that's another common mistake, is being a little too truthful. uh there's times where people absolutely love both of the couple, but then there's also times where maybe they don't really do that, but you're the best friend and you're getting up there anyway.
Yeah.
And so this is not I had a client who their kid was doing a speech, and the kid hated the new wife, and it was like, okay.
Oh my
Like,
God.
so it was really hard to get the draft going, because he didn't really have a whole lot of nice things to say, right?
See,
But
that's exactly why you hire a
yeah.
speechwriter, because I
Yeah,
mean, can you
exactly.
imagine it
Yeah,
left to their own devices, like how that would have turned out?
yeah. And when we finished the draft, these weren't lies. We just found enough things to say that were nice and acceptable to him, to make it work. So but this is not the time to this is not confessional. This is, you don't have, this is again a gift to the couple, and it has to stay a gift, and so we curate a lot of that. And sometimes what our role is telling people what not to say.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I have to speak in groups of people a lot for my job. And one of the things that I learned about public speaking, because I have like a paralyzing fear of public speaking, like to
Yeah,
the point where and I've gone through, true story, hypnotism, EMDR.
really.
It
Yeah,
is like literally it's rooted back to like a childhood traumatic experience where I was in the choir. It was called Kingdom Kids.
yeah.
I was at church and my parents made me do this choir thing. And I literally I mean, it's just I was
Okay, yeah,
traumatized. And so there's a lot of people have a fear of public speaking, but some people have a fear because something happened to them, right?
sure.
So for me, I have gone through so much work because I have to do it for my job. Like I have to. And
Yeah.
so I've had to figure out, I mean, I've read books, I've gone to hypnotherapy, EMDR, like all these different things to just try and get like the physical anxiety to go away. But
Hmm.
then on top of that, like one of the things that I've learned in public speaking that really helps calm me down is not just practicing, but I will actually record myself on my Apple phone. Like
Yeah.
I'll just put my iPhone, because what it does is it shows me, and then I'll watch it back. Like if it's a really, I don't do this for everything, but like if it's a really high stakes speaking engagement where I'm like a keynote, or it's really
Yeah.
long, or something that's, high stakes, I will literally record myself going through the presentation and play it back. And then I will see the areas that I either need to cut out, or
Yeah.
areas that I need to like increase, like you're saying, increase the energy or lower my voice or slow down. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I'll do it multiple times until I feel confident about it.
I
And
think
once I'm
that's
confident about it, then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to do this.
I think that's good when you get to a certain point in your public speaking where you're being very deliberate uh and you're not gonna, it's not like you're not going to do this, right? You're good enough at this to where uh you're going to be fine. You're just refining, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think I don't normally tell people to record themselves because they're not going, first of all, they're not going to deliver this with the same emotion that they would the day of it, right?
Yeah. True. So
But
they're
the other,
critical of themselves.
yeah, and that's the part I worry about. These are people that
Yeah.
are already uh worried about how they're going to sound, and if they started recording themselves without having practiced it a whole ton and having gotten some guidance, then it's going to sound terrible and it's just going to undermine their confidence, right?
So
But
don't do what I just told you. Listen to
ju-
Brian, because he's
well,
professional.
but once you get a little bit more behind you and you've practiced it, and maybe once you've worked on it with us and you start to feel some confidence, then I think then you could listen to it and say, okay, how can I make it better? But you have to have the right mentality
Yeah.
to do that. Yeah,
Well, and I think too, like what works for one person doesn't always work for someone else,
absolutely.
that's
Absolutely. And I mentioned right before we started, like I'm one of those people that does a lot of, I'm not a very comfortable public speaker extemporaneously. I can get up there and if I know what I'm going to say, I can, and I've practiced it, I'll do fine.
yeah.
But if I'm sitting here, I stammer, I go, I do all of the things that you want to actually work out. So I take my own medicine here. You have to practice it. You have to know what you're going to say and you have to write it down. And that's where winging it gets a little iffy for some people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is a perfect spot. I'm going to take a quick commercial break, and we are going to be back with more Brian Franklin from Vows and Speeches. So hang on tight.
Are you on the hunt for the perfect wedding vendors to make your destination wedding dreams come true? If so, look no further than DestinationIDo.com's vendor directory. From our homepage, simply click on Find a Vendor. Scroll down, and on the left-hand side, choose your filters. From here, you can find out all about a vendor, look at some of their past work, or scroll down to find their contact information. Instead of searching for hours on Google or Instagram, save yourself some time and go to DestinationIDo.com/find-a-vendor.
And we are back with Brian Franklin from Vows and Speeches, and we are talking all about what it's like to have someone else actually write your vows or your best man speech, your maid of honor speech, and all that fun stuff. So what if someone's hired you? You've created a really amazing speech, Brian, but the person giving it is just deadpan, or they're really drunk. Like maybe they didn't take the cue and they decided to over imbibe at the all-inclusive on Mai Tais all day. Or they're just like me, paralyzingly, nervous. Like what do you suggest in those situations? Like great speech, but now it's like, W day and we've got things going on.
Well, again, most of the work that we do is in the interview process. That's really where we get these stories and these things from them. And these are very personal stories that they love telling. But they're worried about how they're going to tell it, right? Or they're worried about making it all work out perfectly. And when they get to that point, that's where the rehearsal sessions that we do are very important, because it's very often the case that people come in and they're completely dead monotone, or they just are reading it for the first time and and you could tell, and it just sounds like it. And so you just keep working with them and keep keep giving them tips. You're not going to turn someone that is really flat into some dynamic,
This isn't
suddenly
Toastmasters,
yeah,
right?
they're not going to come out and start dancing around. But the people in the crowd, and particularly the couple, they know this person. And so if there is some emotion, if we can get them lifted up a little bit here or there, then they're going to see that, and they're going to appreciate that that this person's actually putting some feeling behind it. The drunk thing, I mean, if they get so drunk they can't do this, then at least they've got it on a piece of paper they can hand it to somebody else to read. But it is helpful to have we tell them print it out in big font,
Big font.
big font that you can read in dim lighting. Don't ever do it on your phone, because then you get that uplighting, which is not exactly the best. And also then you get pictures back and it looks like you're looking at your phone, right?
They're like scrolling Instagram when they should be giving speech,
right? So but if they're really drunk, there's most times they're still going to be able to read it off the piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do, but they could hire us for more practice sessions, and we can keep coaching them, but it's going to be better than our job is to make it better than it would have been if they had just done it themselves, and to take some anxiety away from them and the pressure of doing this by themselves. And that's really, we're not miracle workers, but we can definitely help. And we've had instances where, I did have one instance where there was a ceremony officiant, and right from the get-go, he was like, I don't know why they hired me. I am terrified. I don't want to do this. I don't, this is a terrible idea. And I'm like, no, we're going to work through it. It's going to be fine. And so we did the draft. We created this really nice ceremony, and we go to do the rehearsal session, and there's just dead silence. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And there's nothing. He just can't even get the first words out.
Oh my God.
Right. And it got to a point where I was like, I got to talk to the couple here, because you're 8 days from the wedding, and we got to be able to do this. We got to figure this out, right? And somehow or another, somehow they talked to him. He read like the first paragraph, so that because normally we don't share it with the couple, right, in advance. The ceremony officiant reads it so that they could all get authentic reactions and whatnot. And read a little bit of it. Suddenly they were like, this is great, you're doing great. And then he was able to do it, and he came across beautifully. But it's, people get scared, and that's why we have a process. So,
well, and sometimes they just need that encouragement and reassurance.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, like the hardest part I have about public speaking, this is what's ironic about it. It's all the anxiety leading up to it. But the minute those first few words are out of my mouth, I'm fine. Like literally fine. Because people say, you seem so calm. Like, I would never think that you were afraid to public speak. And it's like, well, no, once I'm up there and I start speaking, I'm fine. It's all that leading up to it.
And they're laughing at once they laugh at that first joke.
That's all you need. You're off.
And then you're in, right?
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
In. So but it's hard to get there sometimes for people. And I know, like, I get a lot of, I teach this, but I get a lot of anxiety in advance, because you want it to be great. You want these moments to be powerful, and that's why we have a business, and it's fun getting people. The other thing is, like, if they like the material, they're going to go up there and deliver it differently. If they're really happy with the draft, they're going to go up there and feel with a little bit more spring in their step than if they had written it themselves and were unsure of it. And so, but we've had people, they call us on a Friday. We had for a Sunday wedding, and it was we did the interview Friday night. They got the draft Saturday morning. We started rehearsing it. We did some editing, started rehearsing it later on Sunday before the wedding, and they went up there and did great. It was fine. It was as good as it could have been if they had come to us weeks before. Maybe not, but they were happy. So, yeah.
So now talk to me a little bit about the officiant thing, because I feel like there's the professional officiant that usually kind of has their shtick. They've got, depending on the culture of the wedding or what type of ceremony it is, if it's
Yeah.
not denominational or if it's, whatever, they kind of have their template, if you will.
Mhm.
Then there's officiants, like my husband is an officiant. He's officiated 5 weddings. So, and
Yeah.
he's the person who usually makes me write it, the vows. And then, because
Okay.
I'm a professional writer. So like,
Yeah.
for me, it's easy, to create stuff like that. But for him, he's like, he's in
Yeah.
banking. Like but he has a very calming, stoic presence, and
Mhm.
people respect him. So he's been tapped quite a few times.
Yeah.
So the speech writing, is it more for that person, like my husband who's the banker,
Yeah.
or and the friend that just gets like pulled in to do the officiants, or is it, have you ever done speech writing or vow writing for a professional officiant that this is their job?
So I had officiated a few weddings before we started this business. So I had some sense of, of the feeling that you get when you're trying to, like, you go online and, okay, well, how should the vows sound? What's the order of everything? And you go through the same process, whether you're a officiant that's professional or not. You still have to figure out, what are the elements that these people want to have in their wedding, and that's part of it for us too. We have to ask them, is there something special that you want to add, passages or anything like that? So you always have a menu of things that you could insert at some level, but really what this is for the officiant, the friend or a family member that has been asked to do this. They've been given this honor. They love them. They're charismatic. They're funny, this, that, and the other. But maybe they don't have time to write an 8 to 10 minute narrative of the wedding, or maybe they don't know how to do that. And even though they're really funny and charismatic. So what we do is we don't just interview the couple individually. We also interview the friend or family member and get their perspective on what they have witnessed, how they have seen this thing develop on the outside, and they may have, maybe they're married and they have some perspective on marriage, and maybe they have some perspective on them individually, and so then that combines into, you get all 3 ideas or all 3 perspectives, you combine that into the story of their relationship, and then we work with the officiant on the edits and how to deliver it the same way we would with any other speech. I've been approached a few times by officiants that have essentially their generic wedding that they would like to try and spruce up, but for us, it's really the magic is in the interview and getting those stories and those details and creating something that's bespoke and not, and very, very specific to them, and not particularly something that people have heard before. Now, sometimes you'll get traditional vows and you'll put, if you put those in there, but other times we did a fireball unity ceremony, right? Which fireball the drink, right? So, and we wrote a whole thing about that, and that was a lot of fun. So you get different types.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about the something we probably shouldn't talk about, because I know there's a lot of opinions around this, and good, bad, or indifferent, it's here and I don't see it going anywhere, and that's AI.
Sure.
Do you ever utilize AI in any capacity at all? Like, even if like you're having writer's block and you're like, which everyone gets, like,
Yeah.
does that ever happen?
No,
Or do you suggest people use it if they're stuck and they're not planning on hiring you? Like, I mean, what's your
no, and I'll tell you what. Let me answer the last part first. I don't think that people should use AI to write their wedding speeches, because I think for all of the reasons we talked about earlier, AI is not going to tell you what not to say, right? AI is not going to ask follow-up questions to get to the root of the story, that, to find out that this person who's this stoic person who doesn't talk to people much also sings Disney songs at home. I mean, he's not, like, you're not going to get that from an AI interview. Where I have used AI is to perhaps check grammar. It's a really good way to make sure that that you haven't missed something in terms of the grammar or the structure of it. And I've tried to get AI to do what we do, and I haven't yet been able to get it to do it. But I'm sure someday. I do think downstream it's possible that if we really needed help writing and we had a really good way of getting AI to do the things that we do, it might be good for a first draft. But I so far it takes, if you do the interview right, the writing comes very naturally and very easily, and you've got all types of things to work with. So it's not right now, it isn't necessary. I think as we scale, and we hope to scale over, I think that perhaps it could be a tool for us, but it needs to go a little further than it is right now before I think we could really deploy.
I kind of feel like using AI for your speech would be like using a Spotify playlist as your DJ. Like, just don't,
And AI is the way AI works. It's assimilating all of the input, right? So it's going to come out with something that's very generic and weak, in my opinion. It might be better than you could write, perhaps. Not you, but it might be better than what someone might do on their own, but I don't know, it's just not for us. I think also there's a growing trend of people that want human written things rather than AI written things. I think there's just perhaps a little bit of anti-robot sentiment out there now, and I would rather people want the customization and the handmade speeches, essentially.
When I first found out about AI, like, I think it was like, I don't know, last year, whenever it first came out, I was like, I heard like a New York Times podcast about it. I was like, wait, what? So I immediately download ChatGPT and I start playing with it. And the thing that impressed me was I asked it to create a list of the 10 reasons a dog would want to go to Starbucks. And it spit out like 10 really coherent reasons a dog would want to go to Starbucks. And then I said, now rewrite it in Shakespearean dialect. And it was believable. So like, if you want to take a speech and like turn it into Shakespearean dialect really easily, then sure.
Or change the tone. You could use it to change the tone. You could use it to perhaps suggest alternative structures. I think it could be helpful to us, but you really do need somebody that's going to sit on top of it and look at it and go, I like that, but I don't like this. And so far it does a very poor job of jokes. I mean, I've not seen,
like knock, knock.
They're really like the worst. And I love a good dad joke. I mean, I really love a good dad joke, but it still doesn't know how to land them the way that I think an expert in dad jokes could land them.
I just learned a really good dad joke. I think it was my daughter that said it to me. What do you call a chicken looking at lettuce?
What's that?
Chicken sees a salad.
Oh no.
Anyway, sorry. She's only 7, so I was like, that's kind of hilarious coming out of a 7-year-old's mouth. Anyway. Well, thank you so much. So anything else you want to talk to us about, like any future plans for Vows and Speeches? I know you said you really want to scale. You going to be doing any more like commercial services? Like,
well, we do. We are often we hired by former clients. We're getting hired to do various presentations and speeches that have nothing to do with weddings. So yes, we can, if you're doing a speech and you somewhere and you need help with that, or you would like to try and make it better and pump it up a bit, we can certainly help you there. Our hope is to continue to get people aware that this is simply a service. We need couples to know about it. We need planners to talk about it. And so we're ramping up. I think it's our hope that this becomes a niche and not just a few people working on it right now, but that it becomes a much bigger thing. And there are, look, there's some people out there that have either tried to do it or are doing it at a small scale. But by and large, this is unknown to the wedding industry. And we've done bridal shows, for example, and we're doing one on Sunday where people are like, wait, what? We always have to explain to them, we're not officiants. We're hoping, this is human written and we can help you, but I think as for your clientele, for the people that are considering destination weddings, I think it's just about making those moments, whether it's the ceremony or the speech section of the evening, making sure that those moments are given the same level of attention as the optics of the wedding, right? Where, you know, we've been spending all this time and money focused on how it looks, and with, you know, perhaps with DJs how it sounds, but what you really want is have those moments become really powerful, entertaining, funny, and something that you really want to share later on.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. And listeners, if you have any you want any information on all the social media outlets, they are at Vows and Speeches, and you can follow them online at vowsandspeeches.com. You can also like, follow, comment, send us an email, and let us know what you'd like to hear more of. info@DestinationIdo. And our website is destinationido.com. And on social, we are at DestinationIdo. Thank you so much, Brian, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, appreciate it.